Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard and welcome back to the Stock Market Outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. And this week we had a little bit of sideways consolidation, a little bit of shakiness with the indexes as well. This Monday was all right on the Nasdaq Composite, but then on this Tuesday we saw a gap down, a push down all the way to the 21 EMA. And not just that, but we also saw a lot of distribution within the growth stock leaders. Some fared better than others, but we did see a little bit of leaders getting hit on this Tuesday. However, on Wednesday, things looked much better. A lot of stocks recovered. We had a little bit of a push up on this Thursday, but then a poor close. And then on this Friday, obviously, because Amazon got hit pretty hard due to earnings, we had a gap down and a decent close, not the strongest. We saw a push upwards at the beginning of the day, but then a little bit of a fade with a lot of growth stock leaders. So at this point, we're still going a little bit sideways within this consolidation here, and things still look decently healthy. We're above a rising 21 and 50 SMA, but my view Tuesday and this Friday, we're a little bit suspect, and we'll have to see how things turn out next week. Looking at the S&P 500, this paints a very similar picture. We had a little bit of shakiness on Tuesday, and we finished at the low of the day today on the S&P 500, but we're still above a rising 21 EMA and 50 SMA, and we're in a really nice trend at this moment. So we'll have to see if we hold above this low. I think that's critical because that does line up pretty closely with the 21 EMA as well. And looking at the IWO, the small cap growth, this is very similar to IWM. We had a push off this Tuesday off the 200 SMA right here, but we're still having trouble with these key moving averages, but we are finishing the week above 300, which is a good sign. But we'll have to see if we can start actually trending above these key resistance points around 315. And I think that would be very constructive for a lot of growth stocks in general, not to just have the growth stocks doing well, but also everything participating as well. Now checking in on some earnings gap ups. Last week we had Snap. This stock pretty much just went sideways, held above that pivot pretty nicely, but didn't have the strongest end to the week. But if you take a look at the pins chart last year, these earnings gap ups can go sideways for weeks, tire everybody out before they really take off. So I'll have my eye on this one. We also had some fresh ones today. If we take a look at Dexcom, you can see a very strong closing range. That's great. And this is basically a 11th month base, I believe, going all the way back to early 2020. So nice strong action out of this stage 1 cup. Looks pretty strong. Team as well had a gap up, but didn't have the strongest close. So this is a little bit more suspect, but we'll see. We'll have to see basically how this acts later on next week. And lastly, we've got Amazon. The reason for the gap down in the overall indexes, I believe they had poor guidance here, but you can see that we didn't have a great closing range, and we're back near the middle of this space. So we'll have to see how this forms up. It was pretty tight intraday if we go to a 60-minute chart, but we'll see how this acts next week as well, whether it takes out the high or the low of this range. So overall, that's a quick run through of the major indexes. And in this video, we'll cover the leading stocks, my focus list from this past week, how it performed. Then we'll move on to sentiment, the big picture article from IBD, and then finally the GMI signal from richardlmoglen.com. And if you do enjoy my analysis at any time, please go ahead and leave a like down below. It really does help me out and my channel. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. So diving in, let's go through the charts of potential market leadership and prior leadership and see how they're acting, because often this gives us a sense of how the general market is doing even before there's a major correction or a strong move upwards as well. So sorting by that weekly change, let's go top to bottom. LC is also another earnings gap up to watch. Huge volume coming in as well. Great closing range above this base, and a decent day today as well when the overall market didn't close terribly well. We held above the prior day's close. So I'll be watching to see if this pulls back, forms a potential entry point as well. Looks strong above all the key moving averages. And if we take a look at the weekly charts, this is potentially a turnaround play as well. Moving on, we've got Team. We already talked about this a little bit, but once again, a nice earnings gap up. Not the strongest closing range, but we'll see what happens next week. AMD, also a very strong breakout, and it reported earnings after this day right here. Had a bit of a move down early in the morning, but then had a strong push upwards breakout on very strong volume. And what I like best is that there's also follow-on days on volume, which to me is the best indication that a breakout trade will work. So finally able to break above that 100 level right here. And this stock has been basing pretty much for 12 months or so. So maybe it makes a move like this. We'll have to see and take it day by day. BNTX continues to be super, super strong, trending above even the 10-day moving average. And just when you think it's faltering with a downside reversal on Thursday, we have a very strong end to the week on this Friday. So it looks pretty strong, definitely short-term extended. But if this does form some type of consolidation base, definitely a potential stock to watch, especially if you're a swing trader and looking for shorter term moves. Dexcom, we already talked about, also a strong earnings gap up from a basically a 1-year base at this point. Looks great. Big volume as well, looks pretty good. EMPH also reported earnings and acted well right here. A bullish outside day, consolidation day, and then a strong end to the week on this Friday. So I'll be watching to see how this acts through here. But ideally, I would like to form a little bit of a consolidation beforehand. So you've got to pivot to manage risk against. Tesla also reported earnings, didn't move that much at first, but we had a 2-2 reversal, 3-bar break to the upside through this pivot, and then a nice follow-on day here on this Friday. So I think one to watch, and you've got a significant resistance level here at about 700, and then we'll see how it acts as well around 750 or so. GLBE, you can see broke out of a high tight flag, although there's no volume really to be found. Strong closing range here after a 2-2 reversal, inside day, and then it tried to move up and break out towards all-time highs once again, but did get pushed back intraday. Fiber, taking a look at that, had a little bit of a gap down here, but a strong closing range. So we'll see if this falls through to the upside, or if it forms an inside day and then leaks below this low and the 21 EMA. Crocs, another recent earnings gap up, is acting pretty well. You can see it had a nice inside day and up on this Thursday, and a decent end to the week. It did finish off the highs, but barely below the prior day's low. Chipotle, also another earnings gap up from a long base, looks pretty great, and is pretty much ignoring the overall market turbulence. You can see that from the RS line up here. And quickly, if you're not familiar, this blue histogram means that it is a price new high, and if you see a purple histogram as well, that means there was also a relative strength line new high on that date. So yeah, if you want to check out my column layout and my chart layout, so this as well as this, I have a video for that. It'll be linked down below in the description and popping up right now. But that's just a quick aside. Moving on, we've got Sentinel, and this was flirting with the 50 pivot. You can see an alert line right here. And we did have a strong move up here, and it looked like it was going to break out towards all-time highs, but we had a very bad fallback within this IPO base. So really, we'll see how this acts, but this doesn't look good. Not the strongest action. Moving on, we've got Net, which acted really well during the Tuesday turbulence. Strong closing range on this day. Nice 2-2 reversal and 3-bar break to the upside on Tuesday, and then pretty much 2 consolidation days drifting down. But all of this is on below average volume, so I could easily see it back towards the 10-day or even a pullback to the 21 EMA. But so far, it's acting really well. I love the large volume bars to the upside as it broke out of this base. NVIDIA going sideways pretty much, and you can see that 200 is a little bit of resistance at this point. Decent closing range today, but we'll see how it acts. I like how the moving averages are curling above, or actually below price, and this will be on watch because it is a super strong stock. And once again, this was a move out of a longer term base. Moderna, like BNTX, super strong, trending above the 10-day moving average, looks great. Docs also had a IPO-based failure here on this Tuesday. And once this breakout didn't fall through, this one fell apart pretty fast. And I was actually stopped out of this one for basically break even. It's always good to have your alerts set, have your hard stops in, because this one fell pretty hard and got pretty wild on this day. But nevertheless, it has formed a little bit of a structure above the 21 EMA and had a 2-2 reversal on this this Friday, actually an inside day and up on this Friday. Zscaler doing nothing wrong, pulling back a little bit to the 10-day moving average, then pretty much going sideways on lower volume, looks pretty good, right near the top of this prior base. DDOG as well, just above this pivot. Not the greatest close on this day or this day, so we'll see if this falls through to the downside next week through the key moving averages. Bill also going sideways on below average volume, looks pretty good. Also above this base right here. So there's a lot of kind of software names that look exactly like this. ASAN also pretty much just going sideways. It didn't have the greatest Tuesday, and I don't like how there's no support on this day, and it was on higher volume, and it was also 3-bar break to the downside. So we'll see what happens with this stock. Domo also going sideways above the pivot, actually trending above that, and pulled back to the 10-day, found nice support there, and went sideways the rest of the week on below average volume. DocuSign also going sideways on below average volume. 300 right now is a little bit of a problem on this day. Couldn't quite overcome that. And this day as well, it had a little bit of a downside reversal bar, but not on super high volume. So at this point, it's doing nothing wrong. FRHC going sideways on below average volume, but this day as well kind of breaks expectations a little bit because it had been moving up nicely, going sideways, and then in one day it gives all of it back. So this day right here is a little bit of a warning sign, although it wasn't on above average volume. MTCH also going sideways within this handle, but not a strong end to the week, although there's no huge distributive volume at this point. Snap already covered, but it's trending nicely and holding up above this pivot. Tried to have an oops reversal on this day, but failed and closed below this prior day's low. And like pins, as I said, this could go sideways for many weeks and then go. So you just have to stay vigilant. This type of volume to me says institutions are accumulating shares. So it remains to be seen whether this will work or not. SPT also going sideways on below average volume, holding above the 21 EMA and 50 SMA. CrowdStrike also going sideways, although not a great end to the week. And it looks like it closed below this low, which isn't a great look after a downside reversal bar on this Thursday. SE had a gap down along with a lot of China stocks, but recovered nicely here off the anchored VWAP from these lows, and definitely a little bit of volatile action to end the week, but some nice supportive action on this Tuesday. Dash, nice upside reversal against the 10-day simple as well as 21 EMA on this Tuesday. Fall through to the upside, but then an expectation breaker and basically fall through to the downside through this low on this Thursday, and then fall through to the downside once again on Friday. GNRC had a huge earnings gap down and moved down all the way to the 50 SMA and this prior pivot area, but had a very strong move upwards and nice supportive action on this Wednesday, and then pretty much just went sideways the rest of the week, 2 inside days in a row on declining volume. Twilio reported earnings on this Friday and finished the week below this day's low. Not a great look, but we'll see what happens next week. Shop also leaked to the downside this week, and these days do have above average volume. Figs also pulled back to the pivot here, and the highest volume day, this down day, is a pretty strong daily closing range. So this could be supportive action, but we'll have to see how this acts next week. Roku was looking pretty good, but this day was a little bit of an expectation breaker, downside reversal bar, very erratic bar as well on pretty high volume, then an inside day and then an inside day and down, and then fall through to the downside with a gap on this Friday. So it doesn't look great, not a strong closing range. Olo just going sideways pretty much after pulling back here, and then an upside reversal, oops reversal on this Friday. And lastly, we've got AMEH, which had a very negative bar here, negative expectation breaker on Tuesday, an inside bar and down, and then it moved up on lower volume, and then once again, a high volume down bar, losing all these lows. So it doesn't look great, and we'll see if it has to form out a base here at this point, or if it holds above the 21 EMA. So in general, there are a lot of these leaders going sideways on below average volume, and we do see some earnings breakouts to watch with LC, Team, Snap, Dexcom as well as some other strong movers after earnings like AMD and Tesla, as well as EMPH. So there are some stocks working, but still a very selective environment. And as always, we have to manage our risk at all times. So moving on, let's talk about my focus list from this past week and go through those charts. SI had a gap up on Monday with the overall Bitcoin crypto move, but then pretty much failed that and went sideways. But I would say that the chart is shaping up a little bit better. It didn't have a great close, but I like this structure a little bit. And if it does find support above the 100 level, that would be constructive as it tries to form out the bottom of this base. S we already covered. Snap we talked about. SKYT, not a great move here. And on this Monday, I actually tried this through the 2-2 reversal pivot. I didn't like how it closed, and I basically got hit with my race stop And I was lucky. This was a smaller than average position because this is a volatile stock with a poor daily volume, but it did have a gap down due to kind of a bad pre-announcement of earnings, and it fall through to the downside the rest of the day. So once again, you got to manage your risk with these kind of higher alpha names with low dollar volume. And if they do give you a warning sign, take it, and always take a small loss before it turns into a larger one. And even though it is moving up the rest of the week, it's a no touch for me because this looks like a bear flag as well. CMG we talked about looks pretty strong. ZI tried to break out, then pulled back, but just looks like it's going sideways. Definitely potentially actionable next week through these highs. So I'll keep it on my radar. KRNT moving up and had a nice move up on this Thursday. Inside day to end out the week. Actually, it looks like it took out the prior day's highs, so not an inside day, but we'll see how it acts next week. DOCS, we talked about. VZIO leaked the entire week, basically an expectation breaker for sure. SITM looks pretty set up for next week, right below this pivot at around 135 or so. LSPD pulled back on Thursday and Friday. We'll see if it forms out a structure here above the 21 EMA. MTCH also, we already talked about, doesn't look great. FIGS we talked about, and Snow, downside reversal on this Thursday, and not a great close on this Friday. So it looks a little bit weak, but this is on very low volume. So it's actually setting up nicely right above the key moving averages, below this pivot at 273 or so. So overall this week, not the greatest showing for my watch list. And I personally had a lot more success with the names that reported earnings and waited for the reaction, like AMD this week. And now moving on to sentiment and starting with my Twitter surveys, we had a decrease in bullishness from 49.1% bullish to now 37% bullish. I think that's a good sign. Some worry is coming back into the market. But looking at the name exposure index, we had an increase this week to 78. So it's still below 80, which is kind of the warning level for me, but I'll be watching this very closely. Looking at the bulls versus bears poll, this is decreasing. That's once again a very good sign. Some fears coming back into the market. And looking at the put-call ratio, this is increasing as well, which is kind of rare to see these days. So definitely a good sign there. Looking at the IBD Big Picture article, the headline is stock market falls, but extends long-term advance. This win streak is over. And reading through the article, they discuss the poor action from Amazon, which fell 7% today after it missed sales guidance, and the stock gapped below the 50-day moving average on high volume and fell to the lowest price since June 10th. However, in terms of the overall market, we did avoid a distribution day on both the NASDAQ and S&P 500, so that is a good sign. But they discuss how the overall market is getting a little bit stretched and small caps are showing a little bit of fatigue. They also mention how out of the 5 largest stocks in the market, only Google ended with a weekly gain. They talk about PINs, which had a very large gap down, and ALGN, which performed well. So overall, their current outlook is a confirmed uptrend with 6 distribution days on the S&P 500 and 4 on the NASDAQ. Lastly, we've got the GMI signal, which is still green since May 26. The GMI score is a strong 6 out of 6 since this Friday. So overall, in terms of my stock market outlook, my current view is still a confirmed uptrend, but I'll be watching the leaders and the indexes very closely to see if we fall through to the upside or downside from this point. And I wouldn't mind one more week of sideways consolidation. Overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new. And let me know down below in the comments what are your thoughts about the market as well. But once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.